My wife didn't know I earned $130,000 a year, so she laughed when she filed for divorce and claimed the house and car. She served me the papers in a hospital gown, then remarried as if I were a debt erased. I was wearing a hospital gown with an IV line in my left arm. The monitor beside my bed was recording my heart rate with a steady beep. I'd been lying in that bed for 31 hours, trying to understand why the dizziness that started 2 weeks ago had escalated into something serious enough to require hospitalization. Danielle walked in at 2:17 in the afternoon. No flowers, no concern on her face, a manila envelope in her hand and her phone in the other. The expression of someone arriving at a business meeting rather than a hospital room. "I filed," she said. Not, "I need to talk to you." Not, "I know this is a terrible time." Just, "I filed." The nurse at the station outside glanced over. I saw her do it. The involuntary look of a professional who has witnessed something that violates the basic social contract of what a hospital room is for. Danielle dropped the manila envelope onto my lap. "House, car, accounts," she said, gesturing at the envelope like a menu. "I highlighted where you sign." I looked at the envelope. I looked at her. She was standing in my hospital room in a new dress I didn't recognize, and she looked like someone who had just ordered a drink she'd been wanting for a long time. "You're leaving me here?" I said. She shrugged one shoulder. "You'll be fine. Hospitals fix people." Then she left. I listened to her heels on the corridor floor until I couldn't hear them anymore. My name is Owen Garfield. I'm 37 years old, and I'm a senior systems architect at a cybersecurity firm. I earn $130,000 a year. I have a 401k I've been maximizing since I was 29, a brokerage account I opened with my first bonus, and a savings account with a balance that would have made Danielle's divorce strategy considerably more sophisticated than it was. She didn't know. The obvious question is, how does your wife not know what you earn? Danielle had, from very early in our marriage, formed a clear picture of my professional life, that I was a modestly compensated tech worker, competent but not exceptional. She'd maintained that picture with serene certainty because she'd never once asked a question that might complicate it. Our finances were structured around 2 checking accounts, a joint account for household expenses into which I deposited a consistent monthly amount that covered mortgage, utilities, groceries, and my own account, which she knew existed but didn't know the balance of because she'd never asked. She assumed the joint account deposit was most of what I made. When she'd asked early in our marriage what I earned, I'd said enough, which I meant as a deflection. She apparently translated enough into not much, and we never revisited the question. The trust on the house was my father's doing. He was a real estate attorney for 30 years. When I bought the house the year before I married Danielle, he set up a revocable living trust in my name as sole grantor and transferred the title into it before the wedding. Danielle called it paranoid when she found out about it 2 years into the marriage. She called it insulting and evidence that I didn't trust her. I kept the trust structure exactly as it was. That was the only time in 7 years I didn't accommodate her. I should have done it more. The dizziness had started on a Tuesday. By the following Thursday, I was in St. Vincent's Medical Center with doctors discussing findings in the particular register of professionals who have found something they need to handle carefully. The finding was a small arteriovenous malformation, manageable with monitoring and stress reduction. Not immediately dangerous, but requiring follow-up. The point is, I was in a hospital bed when my wife served me divorce papers, and I genuinely didn't know how serious my situation was. The doctors hadn't told me yet. I called Noah Castellano at 2:31 p.m., 14 minutes after Danielle's heels had faded down the corridor. Noah has been my attorney for 4 years. He processes quickly and completely, then tells you what to do. I told him everything in 4 minutes. The papers, the envelope, the house and car and accounts, the smile, the shrug. He was quiet for a moment. "She served you while you were inpatient at a medical facility," he said. "Yes." "Don't sign anything. Don't acknowledge anything in writing. I'll be there in 40 minutes. He was there in 37. He read every page while I watched the monitor and tried to eat hospital jello without tasting it. When he finished, he looked up. "She's claiming the house under community property. She hasn't done a title search. She won't find what she expects to find." I said. "No," he agreed. "She won't." He set the papers down. "Tell me about the accounts." I told him everything. The joint one, the personal one, the 401k, the brokerage. I told him the numbers. I watched his expression process the revision of whatever estimate he'd had of my financial situation. "She doesn't know your income," he said. "She thinks I make around 60,000, give or take." He was quiet again. "Owen, she built this entire strategy on a financial profile that doesn't exist." "I know. She's expecting you to roll over because she's assuming you can't afford to fight." "I know that too." He closed his briefcase. "Then here's what we do." The first thing Noah did was contact the bank. The activity on the joint account over the preceding 2 weeks included 4 withdrawals that exceeded anything Danielle and I had discussed, collectively $8,400 in 11 days. Noah filed a motion for a temporary freeze pending review of potentially dissipated marital assets. The freeze went into effect 48 hours later. The second thing was the title. Danielle's attorney filed a valuation request and discovered that the property was held in the Owen Garfield Revocable Living Trust, established 4 years before the marriage, with no community property interest. Her attorney called Noah 3 days after the freeze to ask about the trust. "What did you say?" I asked. "I said it was a premarital asset protected under trust structure, and that any claim would require them to pierce the trust, which requires evidence of commingling that doesn't exist. The car, leased in my name, insurance in my name." Noah filed the revocation. Danielle's access was terminated within 72 hours. Temporary restraining order filed and granted, establishing my exclusive occupancy of the house based on my documented status as sole beneficiary of the trust. I was in my own home within a week of discharge. Danielle was not. I came home to a house that Danielle had partially vacated. She'd taken things, some art, some kitchen items, a rug I'd always liked that she'd always complained about. I stood in the living room on my first evening home and took inventory of what remained. The house felt different, larger. The specific largeness of a space that has been emptied of a particular kind of weight. I ate dinner at the kitchen table alone. I listened to the house settle. I thought about the cardiac monitor beside my hospital bed and the fact that Danielle had walked into that room with a manila envelope and walked out before the doctors had explained what they'd found. She hadn't known how serious it was, but she hadn't asked. That was the thing. She had been in that hospital room, seen the IV, seen the monitor, and she'd handed me papers and left. She hadn't asked. My friend Theo called on a Sunday evening to tell me something I'd have found out anyway, but was glad to hear from a friend first. Danielle had gotten married 3 weeks after serving me divorce papers. A man named Griffin Haas, whom she'd apparently been seeing for some time. The timeline suggested the relationship had begun approximately 10 months before she filed. She had married him as though I were already erased. 11 days after the wedding, at 11:23 p.m., my phone lit up with her name. I answered. The Danielle on the phone was not the woman who had walked into my hospital room, smiling. This version was breathing too fast, voice stripped of smooth confidence. "Please," she said, "tell me what you did." In the background, a man's voice, elevated, confused. The voice of someone who had recently learned that the financial landscape he'd been standing on was structured differently than he'd been told. I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen of my house, the house in my trust, and I listened to her unravel. The joint account was frozen. Her cards were declined. The mortgage payment had failed. The dealership had called about the car. The title search on the house had come back flagged. "Griffin's freaking out," she said. "His kids were visiting. We might be homeless." Homeless. The exact outcome she had casually planned for me from a hospital room. "You left me in a hospital bed," I said. "You didn't know what was wrong with me, and you handed me papers and left." Silence. "I know," she said. "You built your whole strategy on the belief that I couldn't afford to defend myself," I said. "How much do you make?" she asked. And there it was. Not contrition, not genuine reckoning. Just the practical question of a woman recalculating her position. "Enough," I said. It was the same word I'd used the first time she asked 8 years ago. She didn't appreciate the symmetry. "Tell me what to do to fix this," she said. "Talk to a lawyer. That's genuinely my only advice." She said something that began with "please" and ended with "Griffin is..." I said, "Danielle, I have to go." I hung up. The divorce proceedings lasted 4 months. The judge was the Honorable Celeste Drummond, 22 years on the family court bench, with low tolerance for claims that couldn't be substantiated. Danielle's claims substantially could not be substantiated. The house, protected by the trust established pre-marriage. Judge Drummond awarded me exclusive occupancy. The joint account, the $8,400 in withdrawals during my hospitalization, were classified as dissipation of marital assets. The frozen balance was preserved for equitable distribution. My personal accounts, Danielle's attorney argued that my consistent deposits into the joint household account over 7 years constituted an implied community financial structure. Noah spent 40 minutes walking Judge Drummond through the account history and the documented division of finances from the beginning of the marriage. Judge Drummond looked at Danielle's attorney over her glasses and said, "Counsel, are you aware of the discovery documents filed as Exhibit C?" Exhibit C was the complete 5-year history of my salary, tax returns, and account statements, documents that Danielle had apparently never seen. By the end, the outcome was clear. I retained the house, the personal accounts, the retirement accounts. The joint account was divided. Danielle received her own car and a portion of the joint savings that reflected her contribution to household expenses. It was fair, not punitive, not vindictive, just accurate. Danielle sat across the courtroom and didn't look at me during most of the final hearing. When she did, her expression was something quieter than what she usually wore. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. She called once more, 4 months after the divorce was finalized, from an unknown number. At 9:40 in the morning on a Tuesday, I looked at the unknown number ringing on my phone. I thought about the cardiac monitor, the IV line, the manila envelope on the hospital blanket, the shrug. I thought about what it had cost me to be, for 7 years, the background condition of someone's life. I let it ring. She thought I was a debt to be erased. I was the architect the whole time.